Yo, what's going on, peeps? I'm excited to bring to you Jay Singh, who I actually met through Shantel, who was my assigned sales development partner. I know she's no longer with LinkedIn, but she's awesome, and I'm sure she'll land um, you know, great on her feet somewhere. But yeah, excited to have you here. Jay is currently an associate of business development and product partnerships in the Bay Area. I think he's currently in Vancouver right now because of, if you're listening to this post COVID, right? We're still in the midst of COVID, and who knows what's going to happen, right? He also has a podcast, and he also has a blog and a newsletter. So yeah, welcome, Jay. Glad to have you here.
Hey, Davidson, thanks for having me. And quick shout out to Shantel. Whenever we were working together, she was my desk mate and she would speak very highly of you, Davidson. So it's been a pleasure to get to meet you properly and have a couple conversations. But Shantel always would speak very highly of you, and I can see why.
Yeah, and it's so cool how, because she's like, yeah, you should definitely connect with Jay. Like, you guys have so many similarities. I was like, okay. And then I think someone else said that too, and I was like, all right, I have to talk to him now.
Who is this? Who is this person?
I'm pretty close to like most of the SDs, but I think maybe
Yeah,
I think are you was it Emily Linder? I think.
yeah, yeah. Another colleague, another coworker, friend, frankly, at this point. She's
Yeah,
awesome.
she's awesome.
Are you working with her?
So I did this workshop for her team, for my Kristen's team. So that's how
Okay, yeah.
yeah,
She
that's
was my former manager. Shout out, Kristen.
yeah, sweet. I was just listening to one of the internal trainings that Kristen put together, and she talks about when to move into management. And I just shot her a note today,
Uh-huh.
like, yeah, I really appreciate like your authenticity and your genuine like love. Like it definitely resonated with me, like the advice you gave.
Totally, totally. Yeah, no, she was my first, I would say, first like full manager after graduating, starting my career, and the level of depth and authentic conversations I was able to have with her personally really helped frame things for me. She was one of the best managers that I could have asked for coming right out of school and starting my first real gig at LinkedIn. And she's dealt through a lot with the team and changing, and now because of the layoffs that LinkedIn has gone through right now, it's September. It happened in August, and so yeah, she actually just messaged me on Teams. I need to get back to her and say hello.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I can't imagine what she's feeling right now, right? Like her team was impacted pretty heavily, but
It's like 80%. It's like that may not be the exact percentage, but it's definitely around there. So it's pretty crazy. And she's been at the company for a long time too, like since 2011. She was one of, if not the first SD team, one of the first SDs on like the first few teams that started at LinkedIn, and she's really helped the company grow. And yeah, like it's been a difficult process for everybody, but I can't imagine for her with having so many talented people that have had to leave the company. But one of the many things that we're going through during this COVID time period and learning through experience, I suppose, of how to be able to go through.
yeah, it's so important, now more than ever to even like take care of ourselves, right? Our well-being, energy management. I feel like now more than ever, it's like just make sure you put yourself first and make sure you take care of yourself before you're giving all the time, but you're personally burnt out, that's probably not a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. I was reading an interesting article right now about. Let's see if I can pull it up. Yeah, it doesn't seem like I have it up here. But yeah, it was talking about how in the beginning of COVID, our brains kind of went to this idea of like a surge capacity, and this idea is that like humans have the ability to extend their mental energy, physical energy for a short period of time during emergencies or natural disasters, etc. And so when March started, especially those who are working and doing whatever they can to adapt to this new world that they're living in, it was really activating that level of surge capacity. But the thing is, it's kind of just prolonged over the past 6 months.
Mm,
And so what you're seeing is a lot of people really burning out and not knowing how to be able to continue and withstand some of this mental energy, because frankly, it's not something that any of us have gone through. So there's not really a playbook. There's not really a playbook for parents to understand how to be able to facilitate their children to go through online education while at the same time leading a team of like 50 people around the world to be able to accomplish the same objectives they need to do at work every day. It's a totally new playbook. And so this idea of like surge capacity, I can send it to you later. It was an interesting one, which is why a lot of people right now are feeling burned out, because they got ready for this emergency availability of energy but it's just like stayed at that level essentially the past 6 months. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious, like, what are some ways, it seems like you're pretty like all around, like, dude, like it seems like you're taking care of yourself. Like, obviously you're not perfect, but it does seem like you have your stuff together. What are some advice for people who, maybe are new to the world of mindfulness and wellness and some of the more like inner exploration stuff?
Yeah, a lot of this content is available online, and I want to try my best not to sound like someone who's just sharing a bunch of platitudes that have already been shown on BuzzFeed and every other listicle article everywhere. But I think, and this maybe can tie into another conversation later about vulnerability and openness, and
Hmm.
I think one thing that's really helped is, and this has been facilitated through my meditation practice. And I remember a story. I remember an experience where one of my friends asked if I feel happy after meditating, like after a session of meditating. Do you feel happy? And my first response was going to be, yeah, like I actually feel really nice and happy and present right after my meditation sitting. Recently, it's been a little bit more nuanced, where some days I'll feel happy, content, etc. Other days I'll feel quite sad. I'll finish the meditation session and be really deep in my emotions, and it's like 7:30 in the morning, and I have to start my day. I'm like, wait, what the hell? I was not looking to think about my childhood insecurities right now. But I think what that does is it allows you to go a level deeper and evaluate some of the potential patchwork you may have left throughout your life, whether it's from your childhood, whether it's from last week. It's being able to kind of dig a level deeper, go to the foundation. When you reach the foundation, some of it's quite sensitive. You don't really want to touch a lot of it. That being said, when you do it allows you to kind of reconstruct some level of your story, some level of your narrative on how you're looking to live a life. And that ends up expediting a lot of the difficulties that may come around. It allows you to deal with difficult emotions and difficult experiences that feel just the same as any other difficult experience or emotion, but allows you to kind of recover a little bit more efficiently and quicker. And so I think that's been one thing that's helped me, is as I've gone deeper into the meditation practice, to really allow myself to feel like shit sometimes and to feel like crap, because I know that if I allow myself to feel that way, inevitably I'll be able to recover quicker. That could be a week, that could be a month, that could be a couple of hours. It really just depends. But I don't know. That's been one thing that's been really helpful for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think sometimes I'm guilty of this sometimes, but sometimes I don't allow myself to feel the emotions, right? Sometimes it's easier just to ignore it, or, oh, I don't want to deal with it. I'll deal with it one day or eventually, right? But then all that builds up, and then some days I just burst, right? I'm just like, like, like it's like the straw that broke the camel's back, right? And that's never a really
Mm.
healthy way of going about life, when like you're just like nice to everyone all the time, and then like one day like someone just says something that just rubs you the wrong way, and you're just like, fuck off. It's like
Yeah. And like, where did that come from? It's like, where did this come from? Like, did it come from like when I was like 14 and got bullied in high school? It's like probably bullied somewhere subconsciously. But I totally feel that.
yeah. And I'm curious, like, what made you want to start your own blog, and your newsletter?
Yeah. I'm trying to think back to like when this started. I think I was in college, and I had a little bit more extra time on my hands, and I would always be sharing articles and links to a bunch of my friends just because I was reading and watching YouTube videos and just engaging with all these different types of content. And I wouldn't think that one of my friends or mentors or someone would really engage with it. And I started just to collect it every single week and like list it out. In the beginning, it was just a bunch of links to be able to share with some friends, and I didn't write anything about them. I just would share them, and I asked for some feedback. Inevitably, over the course of the next few months, and some of the feedback that I received was, hey, you should write a little bit about the links that you're sending, so it could provide some context on what you're trying to share. Why is this interesting? Why should I open it up and read it? And so that's when some of the exercises of writing and contemplating on what I was reading started. I think over time, it's become a really interesting process of being able to, I guess, go through a process of engaging with an idea. Some people engage with ideas a little bit differently. For me, it's usually through conversation like this, maybe watching a YouTube video or reading a blog, trying to reflect on it, put it out in the world, share with you, Davidson, see what you think, get your criticisms, your feedback, update it, and then actually try to write it, because I now know that writing has acted as a beneficiary for like a couple of reasons. One, it helps me think. If I can construct my thoughts and you can read it and you understand it, that means I probably have a good grasp of it. If I write something down, I share it with you, and you're like, I don't know what the hell you're saying, that probably means I actually don't know what the hell I'm saying. That's one, the thinking. And then two, it's the ability to develop a really strong network, which was not something I thought of before. People can engage with the writing, especially through a newsletter like whenever they want to. They can get an update on your life. They can respond back to you. Hey, this is an idea that I was also thinking about. What do you think about this? It's also a good way for people that are reaching out to you for the first time to start engaging with your writing and get a good understanding of the type of person that you are. And so it's something that I really want to continue doing over time. It helps me mentally with my mental health. It also helps to be able to develop good relationships, which then I'm looking back to your mental health.
I love what you said about it helps you, like what I heard from that was like it helps you process things, right? So instead of like being heads about it, it's like, oh, okay, like this, I can communicate exactly what I'm feeling and exactly like what's top of mind. Because I think sometimes like it's in our unconscious and we don't really like verbalize it. I think verbalizing it helps us get a pretty good grasp and understanding of like the core of what's going on. And I also like what you said about like just really building those deep, authentic relationships, right? It's like we meet so many people, especially work, like we meet so many people that, let's say we don't have as deep of a relationship with, right? But you never know, like they might be into a lot of these things that you're into, but maybe they just they don't know that you're interested in the same things, right? Because there's so many people that we meet throughout our lifetime. So if it's a way of just connecting with them, even if it's just that one portion of your newsletter, it's like, oh, I got value from that. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Totally. Davidson, I just want to make sure you can hear me okay. Can you hear me? My AirPods just died, so now I'm on a speakerphone. Is this okay?
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, cool. And just one other thing on writing, and I think I shared a little bit about like personally how it helps to be able to construct your ideas and engage with certain things in a more like constructive way, literally seeing what you're thinking on paper. The second is being able to maybe engage with other people and develop a network. I think like one thing that's really helped me professionally has been to bring up as much as I can personally with those people. I think I'm lucky to be able to work at a company like ours where you have executives and leaders and middle managers and entry level folks that are really in tune with trying to get to know you as an individual rather than just a professional title and your status symbol, etc. I think one thing that's supported my growth and frankly just given me a lot more life satisfaction is to be able to be vulnerable and open with people in like quote unquote power, leadership positions, etc. And try to be vulnerable, because then that creates space for them to also open up and have a more realistic conversation. I think what it's done for me then is to humanize these leaders a lot more effectively and think that, hey, like, you know what, if they can do it, then like they're really smart and they've worked really hard, but I'm actually getting to know them on a personal level at this point. We're grabbing drinks, we're hanging out, we're chatting for coffee, we're grabbing a Zoom call. I know you as an individual. Now I know like what you've done to be able to obtain that level of success professionally and personally. Like now I can live into that as well. And so it's something I encourage really anybody, specifically those early in their career, to develop personal relationships with professionals rather than just professional relationships with professionals and leaving the personal side to just the personal. I think melding all those things together helps you personally because it just is more satisfying to have great conversations with people rather than bullshit surface level chat. And it also helps you professionally because then they know you, they trust you to live up to whatever high bar that they're setting for you. And because they know you as a person, it just kind of puts away any of the professional angst. But so it's something that I wanted to also express there.
Yeah, I like what you said about. I mean, I think it definitely differentiates yourself, right? I think not many people have a newsletter, or if they do, it's very like it's marketing, right? It's like salesy, right? It's not like coming from a place of like, well, this is who I am, right? It's more like, I mean, I can't generalize, but I would say most newsletters, right, are kind of just like buy this product, right? Clearly, you're not like
Yeah.
selling anything, right? So, that makes that immediately like makes people trust you more, and it's just a good way of, because at the end of the day, like we're inundated with, so we meet so many people, right? So what's gonna make me like stand out? And I remember just reading your newsletter. I got the last one. I was like, wow, like you put a lot of thought into it, and these are some deep topics that I'm just like, wow, like next time we hang out, like have so much to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And for me, like I think that's cool because I think like nowadays, like I think sometimes we attach our identity too much to our title at work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But at the and then sometimes we're afraid to bring our outside of work self to work, right? I mean, most company LinkedIn is pretty good about it, but most other
Mm-hmm.
companies, like they wouldn't want you to talk about your like your blog or your newsletter, or it's like that's separate, like that's outside of work. But at LinkedIn, it seems like
Mm-hmm.
you're celebrated for just being who you are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're pretty lucky, and I think the goal is to have a company like LinkedIn leave its footprint with other companies in similar industries, or frankly anything that our alumni end up going and doing. There should be an expectation for any of the alumni from this company to go on to the next company to start their own company, and have those cultural values just be an assumption of the operating system of the organization that they're working at or that they're starting, which is pretty cool. And ideally, this culture ends up having trickle down effects for the rest of the economy. Let's see how long that happens. And obviously, there's work that LinkedIn can do as well. But frankly, we're at a great place, and a lot of the ways that they think about things are very forward thinking, especially considering we do work in corporate America.
Mm.
Doesn't feel like that sometimes, thankfully, at LinkedIn, which is really nice.
Yeah, yeah. And so I know one of the projects we have together is like specifically around like masculinity and our definition of it. And it seems like you're very passionate about a lot of things, which I think is great. Would you like to share a little bit more about like your journey and sort of like how you ended up at LinkedIn?
For sure. And do you want me to talk about like vulnerability and masculinity in there, or do you want to go first as background and then we can talk about that later? Whatever you want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So some additional context. I put together a men's group, and we're gonna publish a book, um, hopefully in the near future. And there's a lot of LinkedIn employees that are participating in their own chapters. And the topic is around like dispelling like toxic masculinity, right? So we have people who are, you know, putting together like male allyship workshops to, Zach, for instance, he was, I think he won the Male Ally Award in New York, right, for the women at LinkedIn. So that was really cool. So we have men from all these different types of background. And I remember like hearing you share, and I was just like, wow, like Jay's really passionate about this topic, and it's awesome because I don't think it's talked about too much, And I know we kind of like grew up with similar humble beginnings, so we'd love to, if you're open to it, to share a little bit about how you landed at LinkedIn.
Totally. And before I forget, and feel free feel free to edit this out later if it's yeah, if it's a little bit too much. But I think two things based on what you said, which I've been thinking about a little bit more in terms of male allyship. I think the first one is, and this is something that I've been speaking to some of my girlfriends about, and some of the women in my life that I really respect and look up to, and frankly have educated me on any of these topics, is the first one, when we're speaking about dispelling men's masculinity, I think it's helpful to bring in a female's perspective in there as well.
Mm.
I don't know what the structure of the book is going to be like fully, but I think there's like a funny irony with having only men talk about masculinity. It seems very generically men like, and I think it'd be really helpful to provide a female perspective in some capacity. What that looks like is for us to discuss at another date, but I think it'd be important to bring that perspective up as well. And the second thing, something that I've been thinking about as well, is the idea of an allyship award given to men. It's like I go back and forth on it. On the one hand, I think it's really good because it kind of provides like a set of inspiration for other men to live up to. You know, if like one person can get the men's allyship award, then other men ideally can try to understand why that happened and live into it, and take the initiatives to be a better ally in the workforce and early in society, and they can have that as like an inspiration. On the other hand, something about it just feels really weird. It's and I think it has to do with, you know, like why aren't we awarding other females to be like allies to females? But maybe we are, but maybe at our company we can work on that a little bit more, because those are the people that are doing, frankly, a lot more work than a lot of men are. I'll just put that out there. It's like men will show up to a couple of these inspiration rings or groups and post about something on LinkedIn, write an article, maybe have conversations behind the scenes with other men. At the same time, this is not a topic intimately that we will work as hard to do, maybe, than other women would, especially other women that are like going way out of their way to be able to think about this and work on it. And so it's like, I don't know, I go back and forth on it, and it's a tough one. But I think it's something that we should be talking about a little bit more as men who care about being allies, you know?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think so. So just to give you some more context, so he was like nominated for it, I guess, just
Oh
from.
yeah. This has absolutely nothing to do with with Jack specifically at all. Like, and I have people in my life that have also like won an award like this. It's more so the concept of it generally. Jack's an amazing person, you know. It's like, and yeah, so this is absolutely nothing against him or the individuals that win this award. It's more so like the concept of the award itself.
Right. Yeah, I think like it's interesting because prior to LinkedIn, I guess I haven't really put too much thought into it, right? Quite frankly, right? But then when you work at a company like LinkedIn, where there's LinkedIn learning courses on how to be a better ally, right? And I've taken that track, and I was like blown away. I was like, oh, I thought this would be just common sense, but like how many times have,
Uh,
and you know what I mean? Like it's interesting like how you think about these things, and you know people don't, it's not like everyday conversation that we have these conversations, right? So it's cool to be surrounded and be in spaces where you're like, huh, and then I've never thought of that. Yeah.
And it can be challenging. It can be very challenging at times.
Yeah.
I think it's good. It's good. But yeah, to answer more directly, some of the influences of my own life when it comes to men's like masculinity and vulnerability generally, the story I was sharing with our other group was where these topics came to mind for me, and it happened in a really odd place for people who necessarily initially think of it happening in, which is our fraternity. I was in a fraternity in university, and again, the stereotypes and the negative things about fraternities and the Greek system, like it's some chapters in some universities and around North America are just absolutely awful, and a lot of the things that they do when it comes to like sexual assault, like rape culture on campus, these things are accurate, and it's not something that I'm hiding behind at all. I can't really speak on behalf of like our organization specifically, but this is not something that I'm trying to cover up. It's something that's a problem and we need to work on it. That being said, one of the really positive things, at least of our chapter at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, where I went to school, was every Monday we had a meeting. In this meeting, we had a space where any of the brothers would be able to go up and talk about whatever was on their mind. There are about 60, 70, 80 people in these meetings generally, all the way from freshmen to senior students. And it was a experience to be sitting in those rooms for 3 to 4 years and hearing honestly all kinds of stories. Our demographic of our fraternity was about 40 to 50%, maybe 60% international students with a wide like variety of racial backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, etc., from all over the world. Canada does a really good job at that, UBC specifically, and then our fraternity and a microcosm of that. And so the diversity of experiences and stories and insecurities and challenges that people were sharing, they could be sharing things like, oh, I failed my midterm, or they could be talking about the way that their father mistreated them when they were teenagers and how that impacted them today. And you would hear these stereotypical, these big dudes, like great grades, like really like walking around campus like they run shit. And then you'd hear them talk about these insecurities and you're like, wow, like there's such a story behind all these individuals. And that's how we developed such a strong connection with one another, is because we would share something with someone that no one else knew about us and vice versa. And that may be like a very simplified equation to create a very genuine friendship. You know something about myself that no one else knows, and I know something about you that no one else does. And that's kind of what it created. But that just showed me the importance of like being able to be authentic and vulnerable as a man, because it has so many downstream impacts to society. One, it helps you generally be able to be more compassionate for yourself. It helps you understand your own insecurities, your own challenges that you go through yourself. But then that has downstream impacts to everybody else in your life. We're just talking about allyship. Having a man that is more vulnerable and like one with their emotions, hopefully can enable them to interact with the women in their life a lot more effectively and compassionately, and not behave in ways that we have been behaving for most of like human civilization, which has been not the best. And then third, it helps our larger communities and our organizations that we work with, the organizations that we run, because we can be more in touch with ourselves, therefore can connect with other people and then understand what they're going through and guide our decision making and policies around that. So it's really those three buckets of like one with the self, like one with like other women in our life, and then generally like with community and society. It just seems like why aren't we doing this more? And I'm lucky, and I think we're all lucky in our generation now, at least in North America, that we're able to have these conversations more and think about it and talk about it, and hopefully educate our kids to do something a little bit better. Like it's almost like a man's journey, like throughout, from like my grandpa, for example. He was really hardworking, but he never really knew like what all these concepts of love and compassion really were. So it was very difficult for him to be able to provide that to my father, who found it difficult to provide it to me. So it's almost like each generation we're chiseling away at what it means to be like that ideal person, that ideal man. And ideally, it's someone who is more in touch with their emotions, can like understand themselves better, can talk to their daughters better, can have these more authentic conversations. Yeah, it's something that's very passionate. I'm very passionate about this.
Yeah, I love what you said about intergenerational like trauma being passed down. Because my wedding coming up in October, like something that I've
Congrats, man.
thank you. Something that I thought about like more recently, right? As like it gets closer, you start to kind of reflect on your past. But
Yeah.
grandfather like was not the most faithful person to my grandmother, and and I think in Vietnam, like the old school mentality, like, and not to say it was expected or it was like okay, but by societal norms, like it was much more common, right? It's like, back in the day, it was like, hey, I'm the man of the house, like I do what I want, right? And clearly, like that has a huge impact, right? Because she had 14 kids, and then my dad was one of the 14, and
Yeah.
having his father around in his life, like he modeled, my dad tried, I don't think he did it intentionally. I think unconsciously he tried to model like my father, right? But just basically just not being around in my life. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
where do I get to disrupt that pattern, and get to, be something different, right? Like it doesn't have to continue. Like I can practice
Yeah.
a new way of being. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah. No, I love that story from your side as well, because right now you're aware of the fact that there could be potential, influences that could lead you to not be the best like man for your kids or whatever that ends up being, but you're aware of it, and you're aware of like this intergenerational influence, and then ideally you can, because you're aware of it, take action to kind of like get away from it or work on it or whatever it is. But it's hard. It's hard because it's what you grew up with, it's what you saw. um Again, it's taking maybe that like intergenerational perspective, like thinking more of like what our kids are going to be like, or what their kids are going to be like, and just trying to influence them in the best way possible. I don't know, those are hard questions.
Yeah, and then I also liked what you said about just creating that space and that structure where all these men could be vulnerable, right? Because I do think like this is like a more general real like this is more generalizing, but women, it seems like they have groups and spaces where they can talk more openly about their feelings, right? Whether it's feeling a midterm or just like venting about something that in their lives, right? But what you have with your fraternity, I don't think that's common. Like I don't think every man in the world has that, and I think
No.
having these conversations is beautiful because the more men see this being practiced, the more they're like, oh, okay, like it's two grown men that are able to talk about these things openly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And if guys can do it with each other and other guys, then it also lessens the load on like their partner. Like how many times have you heard how many times have you heard women saying, man, like my my boyfriend like always comes and just like complains about all things and is like opening up, and that's fine, like I'm there for them, but like I have my other friends to also go talk to about these different things that are happening in my life, but they may not, because they don't have the type of relationship with their other men in their life to have those open dialogues. But if you do that, and ideally like it can lower the burden on your partner from just being the person who's dealing with all of your emotional it's not baggage, but all of your emotional like things that happen in your day-to-day life.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this has been a pretty awesome conversation. I feel like we touched on some pretty deep topics. I would say some of the big takeaways that I've gotten from this conversation is like, just around authenticity and like stepping into and not being afraid to like share yourself, right? I think we all crave like that human connection, that like wrong, just like deep conversation, right? I think too many of us like have these superficial conversations because we're afraid of like, well, if they know the true me, like they might think, judge me, or they might think, oh, like, but I think the more vulnerable we can be and the more honest we can be with ourselves and others, like it just leads to a higher quality of life, right? Because at the end of the day, like, that, hey, like these are people that I can talk to about anything, and I'm not afraid
Mm-hmm.
to just talk about what's going on in my life instead of like, oh yeah, I'm good. It's like, how you doing? Like, oh, I'm good. Like, how about you? Are you good? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
very surface level.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And another thing, this kind of relates a little bit to what we were just talking about right now, but also a question before of like what helps with like just general mental health. I think
Mm.
people in their 20s and early 30s prioritize, career, they prioritize relationships, they prioritize the things that we should be prioritizing, like more so in what society tells us to, which is the right way potentially to prioritize. For me, it's been actually prioritizing like family and friends first, always,
Mm.
like always, and then figuring it out for everything else afterwards. What I'm like very tactically, what I mean by that is it's a work day, it's Tuesday. This is a conversation right now that I want to have, and I know that it's impactful, and that may mean another hour or two of extra work later in the evening, which may mean that I make work a little bit later today.
Yeah.
A friend may call at like 9 a.m. I had this big project I needed to finish by like 3 p.m. I'm going to take that call potentially if they really needs to, if she really needs to speak to me, or he really wants to be able to vent, and I'm going to take that call, and I'll figure out the work stuff after. And I always figure out the work stuff. That's the thing. You will always figure it out. It's not, you're not going to implode. It'll figure itself out. But sometimes those personal relationships end up fizzling away because we're only prioritizing on our work and our relationships, like with our partner. Like ideally, there's a more holistic perspective there where you can prioritize those friendships, because they end up, and family, because they end up coming back around in like so many valuable ways for yourself, and also just generally for like your friends that you have. And so that's like one thing that I don't hear that often. And I don't know, like there can be both. You can prioritize that and then also achieve a lot in your career. You can do both.
Yeah, that's a really good takeaway. I think like the COVID era has actually helped us see like how much we've been prioritizing work and career. And I think people are starting to see like, oh, okay, like maybe I should pick some time to catch up with family or people I haven't spoken to in a while. So in a way, this time has been timely in the sense that, it's helped us kind of reflect and reach out to loved ones more often than we normally do.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you, Jay. I really appreciate your insights, your wise beyond your years. Being a relatively young dude, it's pretty cool. Can't wait to see what you continue to create and all
Same with you, man.
the spaces that you're part of.
I'm, I'm excited. I'm excited to keep working on this book together. I need to get to my first draft.
You'll get it done. I have faith in you.
Thanks, man.